Welcome, everybody. I'm here today with the one and only Nicole Shanahan. She, of course, is running for Vice President of the United States of America, running mate of RFK Jr. And, we've interviewed RFK Jr. a number of times in this show, so I have all kinds of things to share with her, and I have a million questions. So I'll be watching on the restream for you guys. And by the way, when Nicole leaves, you'll have a chance to ask me questions or interact. Insofar as on the Rumble rants and the restreams, I'll be looking for you guys there. May not be doing too much until then. That'll be in about 40 minutes. But right now, it's going to be me and Nicole Shanahan. So do not go away. Be right back. Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying. You go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. Back here at Nicole Shanahan. Can I tell them where we are?
Sure.
Okay, we're in the home of Nicole Shanahan. She very kindly allowed us to come out here and do this interview, which I'm grateful for. So a lot going on. Did you ever imagine to be running for vice president? This is an easy question to start with, like softball. Yeah. You ever imagine to be running for vice president of the United States of America?
I've always been civically inclined. I've always cared a lot. I've always wanted to speak up when it's necessary to speak up on behalf of justice. And I've been involved in politics for well over a decade. Usually behind the scenes. But this is a different election. Bobby Kennedy is a different kind of candidate. And I'm really honored to be able to do this work. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to speak on behalf of individual liberty, mothers.
Well, I want to stop you right there because individual liberty is sort of why Bobby caught my attention. And when I first interviewed him, he declared that I was doing something brave by even talking to him. This was a few years ago. And I thought something is desperately wrong. If two professionals can't have a conversation on a public platform and it's brave, that is insane to me.
Yeah.
And it was the moment the sort of light bulb went off in my head that we have to do something, and we particularly have to defend speech.
Yep.
That's sort of been my thing ever since. And just as recently as yesterday, somebody was saying, how dare you platform somebody? And I can't help, I'm sorry, Nicole, it's gonna be your interview, but I couldn't help talking about this. Hey, I have been talking to outrageous people in media my entire career, whether it's KKK members or Nazis or criminals, trying to figure out how they tick on a fully executed cable network platform. It's how we learn about people that are outliers so we know how to bring them back or know what they're thinking or try to address it. You go at it. You don't hide it in the closet. It grows. if you don't bring things out into the light. Sunshine should be the cure for everything right now. So that's where I got started.
I believe in that both figuratively and literally.
Okay. Yeah, and you very kindly gave us some vegetables, which were a product of your sunshine, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
But you were on the record as saying that you're a progressive through and through. I found that quote. Have they changed, left you behind, or do you still call yourself progressive? How do we reconcile the impingement, the intolerance in the name of tolerance by progressives and still maintain a progressive attitude or point of view?
I think something has happened to what historically has been considered liberal or progressive. They're actually become very intolerant.
Oh, yeah.
They've become, I think, real enemies of free speech, unfortunately.
It seems like the Bill of Rights seems something questionable to them.
It seems dirty. There's something about it that they equate to being American, which they equate to being something with a very terrible history that should be an iconoclastic relationship. Iconoclasm being a complete throwing out of these principles.
Because of the power imbalances and colonialism.
I think, yes, that's what underpins.
That's the conceit.
Yeah, and that's what qualifies this real behavior to throw out this good preciousness, not even willing to look at the good and preciousness of the Bill of Rights for, pointing out the ills. It's really misguided. I think that it's the product of a predatory group of adults that are using the youth.
Professors?
I don't know that it's all professors. I do know that, academia is a place that receives a huge amount of money. Like academia is
from all
not
over the world.
From all over
from
the
enemies.
World. Yeah. And, Qatar, who knew? Oman, a huge funder of U.S. academic universities and institutions. And so you have to remember that where we are in 2024 is very, very different than where we were 20 years ago when you were in college, when I was in college.
I always thought I was liberal. Liberalism seems to have left me somewhere on the right.
Liberalism, in my definition, has always been about asking questions in a dignified way and listening to dignified responses in a dignified way.
I also thought that was journalism, but evidently that's not that anymore.
That it was science too.
Science too, which is mind-boggling to me. That to have an alternative point. Oh man, you're pushing my buttons. I'm not pushing yours yet. But you people that are taking issue with the outliers, you would be the Spanish Inquisition going after Galileo. That would be you. And those of you who were reporting your neighbors for not wearing a mask, you would be the German prison guards. That's who turns into those things. So if you don't want to be prison guards or Spanish Inquisition, if you historically have felt these were bad things, you really need to examine yourself. Should we get into trouble again like that?
My mom grew up in communist China. She was 8 years old when she found her little sister had passed away due to the famine. This is not stuff we should be taking lightly, and you don't have to look that far back in history to understand where this kind of intolerance leads next to, where this kind of hysteria leads, where this manipulation and abuse of the youth leads.
So again, I want to stop you. You use the word hysteria. I had never thought about those history. You're talking about the Cultural Revolution. We're talking about Nazis. We're talking about fascism in Italy. We're talking about Leninism. These were all political movements, mob movements, interesting bureaucratic movements. They all go back to the Jacobins in revolutionary France. If you really look at it, that's where it all started. But be that as it may, I was reading a book by Larson recently about the 1933 Germany, and he was saying, he was reporting through the eyes of the American ambassador in Berlin in 1932 or something, and several of the ambassador employees at the embassy were talking about the hysteria that had gripped the Germans, and I thought, I never realized that too, the Nazi also hysterical. It's always an hysteria that whips it into the mob action that it becomes. The totalitarian impulse is a hysterical impulse.
Yeah. It is. It's a hysterical impulse. And I try not to fall prey to it, which is why so many of us fell in love with Bobby Kennedy's messaging. His messaging is not like he takes on these massive topics. He reveals a truth that would make most people hysterical because it's so hard to believe that, for instance, our FDA is lying to us.
He opened my eyes.
Right.
I couldn't believe. I had trouble going with it. At first, I was like, "Oh, come on,"
Yeah.
because I had a different experience of the AIDS pandemic than he reported, and I was like, yeah. And then I just kept listening to him. I'm like, oh my God, he is so. It takes you have to really hang with it to get your eyes open.
And the only way you cross the chasm of disbelief or you cross the chasm of resistance is by doing so calmly, by presenting your facts, by doing it from a place of wanting to reconcile, doing it from a place of respectful conversation and toning it down in a way that people actually are in the cognitive and their central nervous system is open and receptive to receiving that information.
Interesting frame. I like that. So I know what you're talking about. So, I've been hanging around the campaign quite a bit the whole way. I don't know if you know this. My wife has been on the record. She is a Bobby Kennedy voter.
Oh.
I have been sort of hanging back, but I think I'm there. I think I'm ready to declare that he's my man.
Yeah.
In the face of that, were he to do something of the rumors that are flying around here lately, I want him in Washington. That's what I want.
Oh, me too.
He doesn't even have to be in the Oval Office, as far as I'm concerned. I want that guy in Washington. Are there other things he's interested in if those things come his way? Has he ever expressed anything? I've never gotten him on the record on that. Like, would he be the Attorney General? Would he be? I don't want him at the FDA so much. I want him overseeing
Where
things.
do you want him?
I want him in the three-letter agency or the Justice Department.
Yeah,
That's kind of where I want him.
I agree.
But I want him where he wants to go and feels like he can do the most.
Agreed. And I think when you get a chance to work with somebody like Bobby, you really have to, be there and ready to support his decision and be receptive to, how he's thinking about it, how he's talking about it.
His campaign.
His campaign, right? This is his campaign. I came in as a supporter and as a donor.
And you remain that way.
And I remain that way. And I'm really effective behind the scenes. I mean, we put together this Super Bowl ad for him in less than 48 hours.
And it was like a 15-second ad, wasn't it? It was just the Kennedy flag, right?
Well, so we had like no time to put this thing together, nor did we have any assurance that they would actually run the thing.
Oh my.
A lot of us were like, we could give them all this money and they're not going to run it. But we took an old JFK ad, and I take full responsibility for this. He had nothing to do with it.
It was a great ad. Did you get pushback for it?
Some, yeah. I mean, it was in the public domain. There was no copyright violation, but we had taken a JFK ad and we had made it modern, which is actually really technically hard to do because it was in a format that's so foreign compared to how we work with digital today. But this was a chance for people to know he was even running because he was being kept out of all the major press. The press you were hearing about him was so negative, which is why I didn't really pay much attention to his race until quite late.
Oh, no kidding. I got there early.
Did you?
Yeah, I was, because I was talking to him before he even decided to run.
Oh, interesting.
And we were talking about vaccines and COVID and what the hell. I was trying to figure out what happened. It was all such a mystery to me because I've never seen my peers behave like that. I've never seen scientists behave like that. I've never seen the CDC behave like that. The thing I kept saying at the end of every sort of comment I made trying to calm people down, I always go, just listen to this. I got wrong. It turned out that's not what you should be doing. You should be listening to your local trusted physicians and people who can make risk reward decisions for you.
Well, and the ones who could still speak freely. I mean, that
few and far between.
It was very few and far between. I mean, I was at Stanford and I didn't realize that the Great Barrington Declaration was being written down my street because it was completely deplatformed.
Have you interviewed Jay Bhattacharya yet?
He's wonderful.
Yes,
He's
he is.
become a good friend.
Good. Okay, good.
We've had a few public conversations as well.
Good.
I host something called Council of the Canceled,
Uh-huh.
and he was on in the first episode of that. We've got another one coming soon too.
I would like to be on that. Although I was canceled pretty well. Yeah, I was canceled for daring to tell people to calm down and relax and not get into the panic that they were stirring up. How dare I? And then I had I still am being canceled for daring to talk to people who question, let's say, vaccine mandates for a 25-year-old male.
Yeah.
Where Omicron is my simple point. Omicron has zero risk for a healthy 25-year-old male. The vaccine has a non-zero risk. That's all I need to know to question whether, not to say you shouldn't take it, but to try to understand whether you should be getting it or not.
Pericarditis, yeah, these are non-trivial symptoms that people get after taking the vaccine.
When my kids were growing up, whenever they'd get a viral illness, the one thing I would obsess about, please don't let them get myocarditis. That's the dreaded complication of a virus. And it is an emergency. I mean, it's rare. It's not. So, interesting. Now, COVID does myocardial stuff too. There's no doubt about it. Mostly in older people, mostly in the alpha and delta age. So, can we just talk about everybody? Why do you have to worry about who gets platformed? It's so weird. So weird.
It's weird. But I will point out, I'm grateful that we can still have conversations like this, and there are still avenues.
Well, let's see if Twitter freaks out about it at all. Let's see. Oh, Adam Kroll is calling me.
Say hi.
I'll say hi if you want.
So we give relationship advice.
You want me to call him? I'll get him on the phone here. Let's see. I'm going to look on Twitter and see if people are freaking out at all about what we're saying. So.
Okay.
If doctor uses data from a blog, he's a grifter or a moron. Okay. Thank you, genius. Okay. Thank you, guys. There's some good things in here. Of course, you only see the bad ones.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting point about social media. I wasn't on social media at all, really, until I joined the campaign. And then my whole life changed. But, I have to say it is, and I say this about technology. I'm a technologist from Silicon Valley. Yeah. The technology has both a very good side and it has also a very dark side. It is an amplifier of the human experience.
And usually humans go through a dark phase before they really learn how to get the tiger by the tail.
Yeah, you got to grow up a bit, which is why, I think these themes around are children ready for this kind of exposure? And
no, the answer is no.
No, I don't think so. I don't know that a 35-year-old is totally ready for it all.
I see negative stuff. It ruins my day. And you can imagine you're 15 or 20 or 25 and somebody takes aim at you from your peer group. It'd be just terrible.
Yeah. I read a comment today too that got to me, and I don't know why it got to me so much, but I was called, which I find so bizarre, but a QAnon trad wife.
Oh,
I was like, wow.
They got you on every every aspect of your integrity is attacked there. Yeah, because you're a scientist, technologist. You're careful in your positions. Not a conspiracy theorist.
I am not.
And trad wife, how dare they?
Well, look, I mean, I didn't know what a trad wife was until 5 months ago when I got on social media, but I guess it's this new theme, but it really is used as a slur, a traditional wife. And I don't understand how that became such a negative slur. I mean, if someone said trad husband, is that now a negative?
It feels like I would receive that almost as a compliment.
Would you?
Yeah.
I could.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about a traditional husband, I think about husband that,
working
has
hard,
a job,
providing,
likes to provide, comes home, kisses his wife, kisses his kids, has a dinner, with their family and the family's together, and asks the kids, "How was your day, kids?" What's so wrong? I don't know.
Well, and you're asking that question at a time when our birth rates are collapsing.
Yeah, I discovered that, through my scientific research
and
many years ago.
and that is has multiple layers to it. But I think a major contributor is economic plus cultural and economic forces, where we give young people, little ability to imagine they can raise a family financially, and little reason to raise a family, or not an understanding of what a rich part of life that is. And I'm a biologist. It is humbly, and I'm not taking aim at anybody's choices. Everyone should make their own choices.
Of course.
But one of our biological purposes is to push the genes forward.
Yeah, you can think about it scientifically. You could think about the joys of life. I found in my research, because I had become the largest donor in women's reproductive longevity a few years ago. It was about 7 years ago. I was like, why are women declared geriatric mothers at 35 in the United States when it's very normal in Europe to have a healthy baby at 41? No one questions it in France. And so I started to invest in the science, and I realized, one, the scientific literature is almost non-existent. Science has not invested in women, and certainly not invested in ovarian function. And then secondarily, once I started to dig in, I realized that there are many things that impact fertility, human health, even the psychology that goes into fertility. I have one scientist that I fund who says fertility starts in the brain.
It is a neuroendocrine system.
It is.
It is one system. It's just one has little wires where the chemicals are released to communicate. The other, the chemicals are released into the bloodstream.
Exactly.
Same phenomenology, though.
Yeah. I love talking to biologists about these topics. And there's many things that can influence that process. And
well, I told you before we heated up, True Niagen, everybody. Kat Timpf got pregnant because of True Niagen. She was struggling. They were on fertility treatment. I told her to take it. How long did it take her to get pregnant, Susan? Maybe a month or something? She was pregnant like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I just take the True Niagen. And I did that interview with Dr. Amy. Oh, there it is. And she says slowly get up to 1,000 milligrams a day. That's this fertility specialist I was talking to.
Yeah. And that has to do a lot with mitochondrial health.
100%. 100%.
And so much of scientific research over the last decade has gone into genomics, which I think is a really big mistake. Billions of dollars have gone into genomics, when really I think that money should have gone into metabolomics. And I think had we invested in cellular metabolic health, which is what that vitamin addresses, and what many fertility issues are actually
let's frame it.
Yeah.
And say, I think talking about CRISPR technology and things like that. And the reason we got down that road was, if we can control the gene, we can prevent the cell from aging, or gene expression, or disease, or aging, which maybe one day, but God knows what untoward effect it will cause with that. In the meantime, our sarcopenia, our overall metabolism, our insulin resistance, all these different issues are completely out of line. So our health longevity is going to be shortened unless we pay attention to that.
Well, it already is.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these chronic diseases are related to metabolic function.
Sure, of course. And food.
And food, which impacts metabolic function. I mean, all of the things that impact mitochondrial function, it's quite vast.
Yeah.
And I only really started to track it all when I was, working on my child's health and thinking about, her autism is oftentimes framed as a behavioral disease, but the reality is what influences behavior. It's actually underlying physiology and medical,
your brain,
medical function,
of course,
biologic function.
So we're here in the sort of the midstream of the DNC. I guess it's their last night, I think.
I believe it's the last night Obama spoke.
A lot of joy, and I have to say that somebody tweeted a chilling meme, Kraft durch Freude, which was the Nazi slogan, strength through joy. And I thought,
whoa.
And I'm not prepared to call anybody a Nazi, but it's the same stuff. The same things happen. The same techniques happen over and over as mobs get whipped into their frenzy.
Yeah.
I'm looking for substance. The only substance I've heard, and it's interesting, I heard a lot of, from Kamala Harris and Governor Walz, a lot of things I started thinking, oh, I could go with that. Where have I heard that before? Oh, that's what former President Trump has been saying. They're just saying the same thing. And then
There's
I
been
thought,
a lot of borrowing from them.
but then I thought, even if I believe that they were, I believe they meant it, their track record is so egregious that I'm like, I can't, I couldn't support them.
I mean, it's almost been 10 years of just horrendous relationship with the American public, or a horrendous relationship with honesty.
I just think, well, honesty is the hiding of a gentleman with neurodegenerative disorders in the Oval Office.
Yep.
On Waltz's side, phone lines to report your neighbors. I mean, talk about Kraft durch Freude. That's wild. Again, if you did that, if you used that phone line, think about what you did. It's not okay.
Yeah. I mean, is this just lack of originality? It's like, let's borrow from Hitler. Let's borrow from Trump. They borrow stuff from RFK too. They took some of our America Strong branding. It's really confusing what is going on over there and where their direction really is, or if it's just a day-by-day cover operation.
For?
Well, let's unpack it. What is it for? I mean, what is this party's cover operation for? I think they're covering, they're covering their tracks from basically gutting democracy over the last 10 years.
Freedom,
free speech, the censorship.
Encroachments on freedom, centralization of authority, and things like healthcare.
Yep. Yeah. I think that it probably goes on and on. We don't really know the depths and scopes of it all, but a lot of it is pretty obvious at this point, which is why I really believe that if we gave disillusioned Democrats and liberals and progressives a new home, we would have likely won, or we would likely win this election. And the numbers looked really good. In fact, they still look really good. The problem is now that their new hat trick over at the DNC is to remove third parties from ballots that they rightfully been on. And
they're forcing Bobby to do something. They're forcing him to join other teams.
I mean, do you know he flew out to Pennsylvania yesterday to try to testify? The judge had nothing else on his docket that day. They wouldn't let him in because he was a few minutes late. I mean, this is unheard of.
Wow.
I've wouldn't let him testify. He's at the gates of the courthouse trying to get in to testify. Now he's back in New York today for the New York ballot case testifying. Trump in this election, we think, has been involved in about 6 active court cases since he started his campaign. We are now in 9 and counting. They have no plans to slow down. So, our intention was always to win this thing, to be on all 50 ballots, which we have accomplished.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We should be celebrating right now. We should be at a party singing and dancing and praising American democracy because there's still a path. Instead, we are spinning our wheels, running after these court cases across 9 different fronts right now. I mean, it's very expensive. And you got to remember, like, Donald Trump has a party behind him, helping him navigate a campaign plus his court battles. We don't have that. So it's
Trump, I feel like he kind of falls in love with people sometimes. Does he admire Bobby Kennedy?
I think so. I haven't personally sat down with Donald Trump. I haven't been.
Would you?
Would I sit down with him? It depends on the pretense. I think that.
Let me ask you one direct question.
Yeah.
Should we have our ear to the ground? Is something going to come soon?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Friday is going to be one of the biggest events in American election history.
What time? Where should I tune in?
The details will be shared.
Where?
go to Bobby's X account, and Team Kennedy will be releasing a press release as well.
Okay, you heard that. So let's all gather on Friday, and sometimes middle of the day, I'm assuming, late in the day. Anybody?
Yeah, we'll get
Let me know.
specifics out. I think it's all
You want me to
building.
push as somebody who's
Hash
now
out.
thrown into the Bobby camp?
Yeah.
Let me support in any way I can.
You know, it's really beautiful you say that, because I think that democracy is so much more than a single individual at the top of a ticket. It's us coming together over
It's
things
you and
we
I
care about.
talking. It's that its foundation.
Yeah.
And a frame and environment for us to do that. Okay, so we're running out of time. I know you've got to leave in a few minutes. We're going to take a little break when you have to get up, but you wanted to talk a little Loveline before I let you go.
Oh, sure.
So, because you were a Loveline fan back in the day.
Okay. I was a huge
and let me
fan.
tell you a little story about it. Because I saw today that some other, sex and relationship shows are getting these huge pushes and platforms and stuff, and they've gone so far from what I intended. The reason I did Loveline in the first place is we had just been through something called the sexual revolution. And it was perpetrated by adults with zero concern or even awareness of what adolescents and young adults might do. And the whole time it was secret. I was an adolescent during it. I was a young adult. I knew what was up. I knew what was happening. And I knew there was horrible STDs. There were unwanted pregnancies. That people were confused. They had and nowhere to get any information about how to manage a simple biology. Very easy, but it was all shrouded and hidden in secrecy under this veneer of Latin terminology, venereal diseases. If you had a yeast infection, it's called Manilia. I mean, everything was completely shrouded. And not to be discussed with young people. I mean, how bizarre. So that's how when I started talking to young people in 1983, it was outrageous. You're sick.
Yeah.
Why are you talking? And the big thing that motivated me, I was deep in the AIDS pandemic. And as that started unfolding, and Dr. Fauci was telling us young guys to go out and start educating, and I admired him for that, and he was a guiding light through all that, and his instincts then were good for that pandemic, not so great for this one. But that one, I admired him, and that's what Bobby and I mixed it up a little bit about. And when that pandemic came around, I was shocked that young people had never heard of it. No one was talking to them about it. The term safe sex hadn't been coined yet, and I was advocating for condom use. Condoms, to buy a condom, you had to line up at the pharmacy with the normal prescription counter and ask for the pharmacist to bring it out from behind the counter. How many 15-year-olds could pull that off?
None that I knew.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was awful. And so there was so much that needed change. And it was, at the time, Dr. Ruth, who, by the way, I got to know years later, and I loved her, I admired her.
Incredible.
One of my great
regrets
is that I didn't go visit her up at the cloister. She multiple times told me to come up there and see her, and I didn't. Yeah, she lived in the Upper West Side there.
Yeah.
And any event, but she was sort of encouraging people to have sex. I'm like, yeah, they're doing it, Ruth. It's already happening. They have to understand the biology and the psychology. And then as the 90s came around, the pandemic of childhood abuse sort of came in, and all the repetitive re-traumatization started coming into it. So we really were looking at this complex human mental health condition and biological condition. And it just got morphed into, I don't know what it is today. It's something completely different.
You're right. It has morphed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unrecognizable.
You're now. I've had mental health professionals say, "I will punch someone in the face if they do say anything other that's not sex positive." It's like what? Yes, and there's things that people get into that they need to be aware of that can go a little sideways. That can help people with. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think that like I've become privy to these things, like there's like this idea of grooming, like, and I was like, no, that can't be happening, and then you see evidence of it happening, popping up all over the place, and then people can hide under sex positivity.
Yes,
and you're like, no, this is wrong. This is like not sex positivity.
No, because you're not allowed to say anything about anybody's choices under any circumstances. You're just not allowed to talk about it publicly. It's all just okay. It's like, it's all, I wouldn't, look, I'm a literalist on freedoms and things, but there's reality that comes to bear on these choices. And choices.
And the counter programming doesn't exist today, which is why I was like, chatting with Adam Carolla. I said, look, like, Adam, you and Drew set boundaries.
Yeah.
Right? All of these discussions you'd bring in, you'd only take 1 or 2 calls the episode because you guys would spend 20 minutes talking about the context, the boundaries, why it matters, how it impacts your psychology, like how it sets you up to think about who you want to be in 10 years.
100%.
And that context is so important. That conversation is so important. Setting safe boundaries that are age appropriate is so important. And you guys did that. I mean, I listened to you endlessly as a teenager because I didn't have a parent guiding me through some of this stuff. So I almost viewed you two as like uncles that like were, giving kind, delicate, responsible advice.
And trying to entertain you so you'd stick around and keep listening. And, that was the goal, is to kind of keep you engaged so you can hear the harder, more scientific stuff sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I think the balance was really great too. Like, I don't think getting it just from Adam or just from Dr. Drew would have worked. It was really this combination.
Called it the Gainsburger and the pill. Yeah. You'd wrap the Gainsburger in the pill and give it to the dog. And then they'll take the pill every time. Well, Nicole, you've been very kind with your time. I promised I'd get you out right now. So I want to do so.
Appreciate
You're delightful. Congratulations on all this.
Thank you.
I'm an active member of your team, so you should lean on me if I can be.
It's going to keep going. Nothing ends.
I will be bated breath on Friday. Bated breath. I want to hear where this is going, and I want to be a part of it. So.
All right. Thanks very much.
Okay, we'll take a little break and be right back. I'll be looking at the Restream and the Rumble Rants with you guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins. And a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted about what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the Wellness Company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off.
That's brilliant. And thank you, Drew. Where's Dr. Drew? Where is he? Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew.
We are back. Nicole had to get on to something else, but she has very kindly allowed me to stay on for a moment here and continue to chat with you guys. Particularly, I wanted to give you a chance to get into the rants and the restreams here, so I'll try to get to your questions. I know Susan was monitoring stuff. Okay, hold on. This is gonna be a little bit challenging. Herb Green wants to know about Francis Collins. Collins, isn't it Redfield that has become a little more of a sane person lately? And I appreciate some of his reconsideration of some of the choices he made. He's looking at some of the things that they did, including 6-foot distancing, which he admits was completely made up, and saying, I'm not sure that was a great idea. I think that might have been wrong even. So here's Claire. Claire Starr wants to know, how did I say that Fauci was a guiding light when he literally did an interview saying that you could get AIDS from close contact like hugging? I never heard him say anything like that, and I was working in and around him for many, many years. If he said it, it may have been in the early days before we knew for sure. And by the way, I'm very clear when I said he was a guiding light during COVID, that was wrong. That was my mistake. And I'm looking for any opportunities to apologize wherever I can. I want to be a model for people stepping forward, going, I got that wrong. I apologize. That I shouldn't. That was not okay. Let's see what you guys are saying over here. I'm also looking at you all in the restream. It's a little harder there because it's moving faster. Hopefully you can at least, yeah, it's hard. With my finger, I'm not sure that's true, but I can do it with the sidebar. We have to deal with imperfect choices. Don't be like a kid that complained because daddy got her the wrong brand of car for her birthday. I think I'm really thrown in. I'm going to take my direction from RFK Jr. right now. Okay, Susan has a question. She's going to yell in. Okay, DM. So there's a question there about hallucinogenics for addiction. Basically, the reason hallucinogenics are having trouble getting approved for things is not what you think. It is not some conspiracy thing from the pharmacy. It is the fact that these are dangerous chemicals. I've seen the consequences. They can be profound. Trust me, we don't know the threshold dose before you have serious neuropsychiatric consequence for any drug that causes hallucination as a result of its primary influence on the brain, okay? DMT, I've not really seen it used in addiction and alcoholism. I've seen ayahuasca and ibogaine being used. I've had many, many, many patients go down to Costa Rica and whatnot and get that. Recalcitrant cases, sure. If you've tried it, and I mean everything else, that's a reasonable thing to try. My experience has been that it has been useful in most cases for about 6 months. And then they all, except for one case, went back. And there was significant personality changes in the patients. So we are saying that you're going to take a chemical that's going to change who you are. That is not something ethically that I can do. Until we figure out what dose to use that prevents that side effect, I'm not ready to throw in on that yet. I just saw your DMT question. Microdosing, I am not a fan of. I see almost zero. That you're only looking for trouble, as far as I'm concerned. And there's really no good data. RFK can't abandon our vote. We do not just want an independent party. We want RFK. Trump should drop out and endorse RFK. Our time is now. And that's one of the things I love about the RFK world. I talked to someone that's in the campaign, up in the campaign, and I just started questioning well, what do you think about 28? He looked at me and goes, what do you think? What do I mean 28? He's going to be president in 24. I was like, oh okay, got it. Okay. It's my fault this person never tried MDMA or LSD. By the way, I've spoken to the head of what do they call themselves? The Society for the Study of Psychedelics, MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I forget the doctor's name, excellent researcher. He was convinced that MDMA could be used to benefit, again, recalcitrant PTSD, chronic PTSD sufferers in the right hands. He kept emphasizing that to me. Very few therapists are trained to do what's necessary to make MDMA treatment effective. That's from the founder of MAPS. He's very careful about this because these are dangerous chemicals. Let's not kid ourselves. What's that, Susan?
I like the questions. Your audience is growing.
Good. Questions. Susan is watching, as am I, and she'll throw me questions. Should she see them before? Oh, she's on X because I have the computer. She has the phone. Okay, so I'm looking on the. Got it. She has to go through 7,000 people there. I'm looking. Molten salt. You asked about the LSD and dolphins. Did I do the? No, there was a drunk history about that in detail. Did I do it? Was I the drunk history about the dolphins? I think I was. That was my drunk history. And so I am there with Duncan Trussell going over that history. I suggest you do check it out. A drunk history was genius. Oh my God. Derek Waters was so brilliant in the way he did that. I'm so sorry that we didn't do that anymore. Was saying Francis Collins was confronted while out to dinner with his wife. Some guy said he belongs in jail to his face. I don't know. No. Look, I've said this before, you guys have heard me say it. You start threatening people with legal action in jail and whatnot, you're going to end up with people that go into defensive posture, not the pursuit of the truth, not into recognition of where mistakes were made, not into apologies, which is really what you guys are looking for, I hope. Okay. Go ahead. Susan has a question. D has a.
Between autism and flu shots.
So a question from D was, have I seen a link between autism and flu shots during pregnancy? I have not. These are all questions. I am, like Joe Rogan said in his recent stand-up special, he, like I, thought that vaccines were one of the 2 or 3 most significant health and public health, particularly breakthroughs in the history of humanity. And his next statement was, I used to believe that, now I think the earth is flat. And I'm open to that idea. The point being that I'm open to everything now for reconsideration, because as I've looked at the research that has been done, it has been inadequate, and I would like it to be done well and adequately. I'd refer you to Joseph Fraiman, Fraiman, who I interviewed a couple times here. He is my most significant, what shall I say, the best thinker on the topic of getting this right. And if we don't do what he is suggesting, we are not doing the proper research. We're not doing what we need to do. And I know it's interesting watching bench researchers. There are a lot of bench researchers, biologists getting into this conversation, talking about how clinicians like myself whine about the lack of double-blind placebo-controlled trials, RCTs, randomized controlled trials, as opposed to observational studies, because the clinical situation is nothing like the laboratory situation. It's infinitely complex, and we have to study it that way to know what we're talking about. Okay. Oh, you guys with your dolphins. I'm still over. Susan, why didn't you warn me about that? I'm looking at you guys over the Rumble Rants, where you guys always have lots of interesting ideas. What's that, Susan?
They like to go off topic.
Yes, somebody's taking aim at one of our Supreme Court justices, saying she's not a biologist. I'll show you the evidence of that came out during COVID when oh shoot, I'm blanking on the one name of the Supreme Court justice. It'll come to me in a second. But they have these public hearings during the initial phases of the evaluation of a case. And she was going on about how we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of children on ventilators. What are we supposed to do? We had maybe none at the time, maybe half a dozen of chronically ill kids who had some secondary issues. No, the fact that our Supreme Court justices, Sotomayor was the one that said that. That is very concerning to me. Yes, Greg the baritone, thank you for telling me Sotomayor. No, it was not Ketanji Jackson Brown. It was not Brown Jackson. It was Sotomayor. Janice says, thank you finally. It took me a while, didn't it? Never, as Truman said, never put off a decision, never make a decision today that you can put off for tomorrow. Okay. I'm going to put on, Caleb, I'm going to put on my headphones in a second and see if you've come across any questions or anything you think I should address. Go ahead.
Oh
Caleb?
no, I'm watching them. I'm putting them up on screen as you find them. There's so many
the
people
screen,
watching.
The screen is very dark, and so I can't actually see it. When you put it up there. So maybe if you text it to me also, or is that too many steps?
I'm actually putting the ones up on screen that you're mentioning. So when I put those up,
good.
yeah.
Oh, okay, thank
exactly.
you.
There, we're on Rumble's homepage right now as well, so that's adding to the constant flow of questions. So if people want to,
here's a what do you call those things where they pay to get your attention?
Super chat.
A super chat. Tropical Rocket, who we've seen in the past, and we thank you, Tropical Rocket. You've been around before, and his or her question is, how is a ventilator not murder? How about negligent manslaughter? I wouldn't go further than that. And the point you're making is that the people that died got put on a ventilator. The question we have to answer is, this is again more in the RCT situation, did the sickest people get put on the ventilator and therefore die, not as a result of the ventilator, but as a result of being so sick? Or did we put people on ventilators early because of the hypoxemia, and that led to their demise? I will tell you for sure, high flow oxygen and high pressure on ventilators turns the lung into a honeycomb scar. We've known this forever. I was doing intensive care medicine on a daily basis before there was such a thing as an intensivist. I used to do that for years. When I volunteered to be in the New York response team, New York was looking for physicians to come in during COVID. I volunteered. They were interviewing me to see what I did, and I could do ventilator management. I did it for 15 years, and they were shocked that an internist would do that without having intensivist, so to speak, training. Point is, the first thing I did when I got somebody on a ventilator, work on getting them off. Get them off the damn ventilator. If you're getting, high flow oxygens, find some other way to get them to not desaturate. Give them PEEP, give them positive end expiratory pressure. And even that then adds to the pressure damage. And so you have to, this is an art form, has to be balanced out. And I feel like it was done in a very rote manner, which is the big complaint about COVID generally, is the extreme bureaucratic approach to everything. Everything was these clinical pathways. You just do it the way the hospital tells you to do it. That may be closer to the murder you're talking about, Tropical Rocket. Okay. Susan, you got something? Okay.
Somebody said they're out of the country and they want
Out of the country and?
support. They had the Moderna shot. They wanted
The Moderna shot.
supplements that they could take to help them.
Are they having long vaccine injury? So, this is a very controversial area. You could look at the interview I did with Dr. Peter McCullough yesterday. He talked about these things. Nattokinase is something he is convinced is helping. He actually has documentation of lowering the antigen levels. See, when people get into long vaccine problems, it's because the body keeps producing spike. We know that now. We just don't know why that happens or for whom it's going to happen. And the question then is, how do you get them to reduce the spike and reduce the antibody response to spike? Colchicine has been used. Nattokinase has been used. Believe it or not, certain ACE inhibitors have been used. Statins have been used. A lot of different things have been attempted. You can look around. I think Dr. McCullough has the best sort of track record with documenting positive results with patients. You also have to worry about the thrombogenic effects, and so things like aspirin start to become important as well. But look at the interview I did yesterday, and look at his website. You'll see some interesting ideas. Remdesivir and ventilator killed my mother in January. I'm sorry, Marilyn. I understand, and there's a class action suit. She's telling me, she's wanting there to be a class action suit. We don't know. Again, it's very hard to tease out. Did the sickest people get it, and that's why there was a higher death rate, or did it cause something? And again, don't. Let's get to the truth. That's what I would like to do. All right. Okay. Elaine conspiracy talked to a nurse during COVID and said something about why they weren't testing for natural immune response, at least before vax are injected. There's no immune response. Yes, the whole natural immunity thing was filled with distortions, and that's where I felt like people were lying, because whenever they'd said, when there any question was asked of an infectious disease expert, what about natural immunity from COVID? People are like, oh, who knows? Who knows? Of course, there's going to be some natural immunity. Is it adequate? Is it going to add to your risk with vaccine? I don't know. At the time, we didn't know anyway. Public seems apathetic about COVID. Yes, they do. Have I interviewed Larry Sharp? No. Natural immunity was conspiracy theory. And everything was a conspiracy theory that wasn't the absolute line and verse coming from the bureaucrat centralized authority, which is never. Look, the CDC did not follow their own pandemic preparedness plan. Do you understand this? They had a pandemic preparedness plan, and they crumpled it up and threw it out the frickin' window. The plan included guidance to state public health officials, who then handed out guidance to county officials, who provided guidance and continued updated information to doctors. We did it during AIDS. We did it during H1N1. The H1N1 worked very well. And what I kept saying at the beginning of COVID was we had a pandemic during the Obama administration. He approached it very appropriately. It killed 300,000 people. Not much we could do about it, except they advised doctors what to do when people got it. I got it. It was brutal. It was nasty. And it was a nasty, bad pandemic. And you didn't even know it happened. And so did we have to go from a dangerous pandemic where you had no idea something was wrong to destroying 8 to 15-year-olds' education and emotional development and destroying God knows how many millions and millions of businesses? Really? Okay, that was my point. Excuse me, while I get a little water and try to look at what you guys are saying. I saw that one. I saw that one, Susan. That came up on the Restream thread, interestingly. Yeah, Ghislaine is saying the nurse had amnesia about natural immunity. Functional medicine, there's some good things that came out of the pandemic, and functional medicine is having a resurgence, I think, because of the excesses of our medical system. Okay. Thank you, guys. I'm trying to get some last questions in here if possible. Johanna, you need who at the top? You're talking about RFK Jr.? So anyway, let me, I'm going to check in with Caleb again in just a second, but let me just say how grateful I am to Nicole Shanahan for joining us today, and what an interesting conversation. And what a wonderful person, what a great heart, and what a great intent. And I'm delighted that she is in political movements. I'm delighted that seems to be a reasonable a reasonable probability that one way or another she will end up in Washington. I certainly hope RFK Jr. does. It's the one that panel, you see that video of me up on stage with RFK Jr., that was before we brought a bigger panel out. At the end of that, I just told the crowd, I said, let's just get RFK Jr. into Washington. Let's find a way to get him there. Let's do this. Let's get him into DC and just try to make the changes that could unravel so many of the excesses and the overreaches and the things that are adulterating our healthcare, adulterating the American system, adulterating our media. It's time to get back to I don't want to say a simpler, but more honest. I think more honesty on all fronts would be a great sense of progress. And look forward to Nicole Shanahan being right there with him. I don't know what she wants to do there yet, but I'm all in on helping her do it. Caleb, anything else from your standpoint?
No, that was just very interesting. I'm sorting through all the chats and stuff. So
yeah, I am too. I couldn't quite get that much out of there.
A lot of good.
But let's everybody get your ear to the ground on Friday, and let's support whatever is going to be announced. Let's get behind it. Let's put our schedule up, if you don't mind, Caleb, of upcoming guests. I know, I think on my birthday or the day after, we've got Salty Cracker coming back. We have Dr. Victory in tomorrow at noon with Senator Ron Johnson. That's the three of us. Should be a really interesting conversation. Susan's show is going to be tomorrow evening. Amanda McCann's is one of my very, very, very favorite Instagram TikTokers. As she is hysterical. And as Susan pointed out yesterday, she really put her finger on why I'm such a fan of hers, because she makes fun of people like Susan. And so Ivor Cummings is going to make a Caleb is just really laughing about it a lot still. So
I'm
it's
excited.
Funny. Yeah. Ivor Cummings is coming back. We're going to find out how he maintains such a positive mental attitude. That was my question when literally Caleb's house got struck by lightning and it took down our show. So is that not literally what happened?
Literally. It was mine and mine alone, and the rest of the neighborhood was totally fine. I lost internet right in the middle of the show, in the middle of the break. So then everyone thought I'd gotten hacked.
Right as I was saying, I want to hear this. I really want to hear the name. How are you smiling and saying these horrible things? Rob Schneider coming back on my birthday. Salty Cracker the day after. Matt Walsh and Michael Gates coming back. Michael Gates. I want you guys to really get to know him. I'm getting to know him better, and he is my hope. He's a source of inspiration and hope. Joel Pollack on September 11th, and many more. Keep an eye on it. Caleb, thank you so much for helping us do this here today. Jack, thank you for the work on your end here at Nicole's house. Thank you to Emily Barsh for the great bookings that we always have. And Susan, thank you for setting this up and for tomorrow's shows. So and Caleb, of course, for producing as always. I will see everyone tomorrow at noon with Senator Ron Johnson and Kelly Victor. You guys have been asking for Kelly Victor. She's coming back. And then at 3:00, Susan's show. And there it is. There's the announcement for her show at 3:00. We'll check it out then. I think you might enjoy it. Amanda's hysterical. So if nothing else, you'll enjoy getting to know her. And we will see you tomorrow. I'll see you at noon. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.